Well, we are down another two superstars in these NBA playoffs. The MASH unit that is this postseason. Trae Young still out with that ankle injury. And now Giannis going down with a hyperextended knee last night. He'll undergo more tests later today. So take a look at the list of superstars who have missed time in the playoffs, which leads up to this question, Brandon. With all these injuries, will they put an asterisk on this year's champion?
Brandon?
Oof.
Brandon?
Listen. So, yeah, here I was just enjoying the highlights. That's what I was doing over here.
I have ever heard on live television.
Here's the deal.
It couldn't have been more of a pause.
I'm going to try not to come off like Charles Barkley here. I want to validate how the avid basketball fan feels, right? Nick, you talked about it. When we opened up the show, it's like, man, it's brutal seeing Giannis go down. It was brutal seeing KD, James Harden, LeBron James, and so on and so forth. It's brutal. Yeah. We have the biggest names in sports, the biggest names in basketball going down at the worst times. So I get that. But at the end of the day, this is what it is. Okay, it is what it is. Like, this is part of sports. It is the war of attrition. Now, some sports are more brutal than others, like football, is more volatile than basketball. But at the end of the day, we see this all the time. So, no, we're not going to have an asterisk next to the Bucks or anyone, whoever, if they win it this year because of all of the injuries. Let me ask you guys a question. Are we going to put an asterisk next to Tampa Bay, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Tom Brady? No.
Yeah, let's do that.
But if you look at it,
sure,
when they played against yeah, right, you would enjoy
that.
That
idea.
But Washington,
I like that idea.
Okay, the Washington football team, they played with their backup quarterback. Alex Smith was down, and they were just beat up in other positions. Thomas Davis, their linebacker, was down. Then you go to the Packers, their tackle, Bakhtiari, he was out, and they also had some other key injuries. And then in the Super Bowl, the Chiefs' offensive line just totally depleted and a hobbled Patrick Mahomes. So are we going to put an asterisk next to the Bucks and their run? Absolutely not. This is part of the game, Nick.
So I was ready to say there are no asterisks, but if by affixing one to this year's NBA champion, we can retroactively affix one to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I can be swayed. So I'm going to let that marinate for a moment. But listen, we are this year, if you're an avid basketball fan, you are going to remember that this was a unique postseason, just like, by the way, last year's was a unique postseason. No home games, no road games, the stoppage in the season. That makes it set apart from history. And while injuries are a part of every postseason, there had never been more than 6 All-Stars miss a game in a postseason. If Giannis misses a game, which he obviously will, it's now going to be up to 11. It is easier to count the number of guys who made the All-Star team and the playoffs who didn't miss a game than the guys who did. Like, KD was one of the only, top-level players in the league who was healthy throughout the whole thing. LeBron didn't miss a game, but he was obviously hobbled. And Luka didn't miss a game, even though he got banged up. Right. And Paul George hasn't missed time. But basically, the rest of your top 12, I guess you throw Dame in there as well, all missed time. Yeah. And then even if you go further than that, the next kind of secondary and tertiary all-stars, you're seeing guys like Mike Conley, Donovan Mitchell, missed time. So that does make this year stand out, but there is no asterisk, Wilds. And anyone arguing that, oh no, people are going to say this championship in history, it doesn't count, I'm going to remind them of something that they have, I'm sure, forgotten about. The 1987 NFL season. Washington won the Super Bowl. They beat the Broncos by 1 million in the Super Bowl. Does the audience, if you're watching this show, you're a big sports fan. Why am I bringing that up?
I was 3.
Because that was the year.
I was 3.
But I know, I was 3 as well. Here's why I'm bringing it up. There were literally scab players.
I love it.
Weeks 4, 5, and 6, the players were on strike. They played, they kept the season going, And you had scabs. By the way, don't cross picket lines, America. Unions built this country, but doesn't matter. There were scab players. And they're like, nope, let's just keep it going. Does anyone go back and be like, Joe Gibbs, you have 2.5 Super Bowls?
Right.
No, they don't. So, Wilds, if that didn't get an asterisk, then this is not going to. In the real time, we're going to say, oh, the Nets probably could have won the title. The Lakers probably could have won the title. But whoever wins the title wins the title. And I think the ring shines just as brightly.
Okay.
Oh, you disagree?
I don't know if... yeah, I disagree because I think when you love a few things, right? You love that Burberry jacket, and you love sort of listing NBA histories and sort of ranking things, right?
Yeah.
If the Bucks win... Okay, the Bucks were kind of due. They've been on the precipice for 2 years, and we'll see how Giannis plays out, but they've got another all-star, and they've built that team. If the Clippers win, oh, Ty Lue gets his second championship. Oh, what if the Suns win? Well, it's CP3, it's emergence of Devin Booker to a super-duper star, and DeAndre Ayton comes out. What if the Hawks win? What if a 5 seed wins, never gets home court advantage, and kind of like Kevin Herter's their way to a championship? And there's a point where you've got like Lou Williams, God bless him, holding the finals MVP trophy. You're going to be like, it's not an asterisk, but when you do your lists, that team is going to be dead last. So if you don't want to fix an asterisk to it, sure, but you're going to look at it in some kind of way.
So let me respond to that quickly and throw it to you, Brandon. So there's two things. One is, yeah, there's a difference between an asterisk and if we were to say the last 30 years of NBA history, who's the best champion and who's the worst champion, somebody's got to come in worse. This is the Nikola Jokic MVP argument I made. There's got to be a worst MVP, even if it's still an all-time great player. But I think that even if the Hawks win the title, Brandon, I think how this season and this championship is looked at is actually going to be determined by what the Hawks do over the next few years. I think people initially, Brandon, in 2004, when the Pistons beat the Lakers, people were like, oh, what a fluke. All the Lakers forwards were hurt. Shaq and Kobe hated each other. That's the worst team to win the title. But then when the Pistons made the conference finals the next 4 years, made another NBA finals, made it to a game 7 of those finals, like, oh, Chauncey's Pistons. That's a really good team. So if the Hawks win and they're a 55-win team next year and back in the conference finals, I think that will change the perspective people have on this year's title if they do get it.
Well, that's the problem. Like, 100% the Hawks are the biggest beneficiaries when it comes to the situation this year. But we got this team wrong. Again, Nate McMillan is coaching his tail off. Go back to March.
That's right.
They get rid of their coach, right? And I mean, they were trash. I mean, I don't know how else to say it, but they were trash. Since he's taken over, they've been one of the hottest teams in the NBA. Even with this whole Trae Young thing, before Nate took over, they were 2-6 or 2-8 without Trae. Since he's taken over, they're now 6-2 when Trae Young doesn't play. That is coaching. This team is the real deal. So we keep talking about the Hawks as if, oh, they just barely they barely get into the playoffs, and you know they're just an okay team. This team is the real deal. Now I get it, I understand it, because you're looking at, man, what would happen if LeBron James, you know, never went down, or the dude didn't roll into his ankle? I don't even know the guy's name. What are you doing, man? Just come on, man. LBJ supposed to be having, you know, he's going for the ball. Ring. But anyways, then you got the Nets out there. You got so many other teams. You got Kawhi Leonard who went down. So there's so many teams that are definitely in terrible positions because of these injuries. But at the end of the day, this team is a good team.
All right, let us leave it there because we got to head out west, talk about the Western Conference Finals. Who is under more pressure tonight, pray tell? CP3 or PG-13? ABC 1, 2, 3. Back after this. Will you and me?